Okay, so do you remember in a previous podcast episode on this second channel, I mentioned that I had an idea for making little worker bots for myself, like little kind of maybe AI script things that would just run in the background, either on my main computer or on different computers that just perform tasks for me, and that I could request things from them. So for example, if I wanted to grab some recording footage of a website for a video, like I would request it and the bot would just go off and do things for me. The idea for the bots was quite comprehensive, like there would be some for ideation, managing recording tasks, etc., and they would pass things on to other bots which did some of the heavy work, like the recording, file management, etc. And then there'd be some slightly more pipe dream ones about interpreting voice and speaking back and stuff like that. And those ideas were kind of like fun, fantasy ideas. So long story short, I built them. So caveat, they're not finished. And it's very weird because I didn't actually think I'd get anywhere with this project. But as it turns out, I have the perfect set of skills to maximize the usefulness of ChatGPT's coding. So we're going to have a little chat about this. ChatGPT is an incredibly useful tool. It's quite controversial as well. Coding wise, I kind of like laughed in the face of it when people show examples of ChatGPT making Blender scripts because they're all like ridiculously simple. They're using functions which don't exist from people's like random forum posts where they didn't properly explain things and ChatGPT thinks that it's an actual thing. And then also the API changes over time so it gets out of date. But I mean, it was still kind of impressive. The thing is, I always figured that people were taking the wrong approach to coding with ChatGPT, and that is trying to make the entire script, the entire program in one go, trying to request it, trying to like debug it with ChatGPT. I've taken a very different approach. And in one day of using it, my first day, I managed to build a hive mind network for my future studio where every computer can either act as the server or a client. It doesn't matter because they're technically the same thing. They can send messages to each other instantly. They all have their own individual roles, so they know what they're supposed to be doing. So theoretically, in each of their configuration files, you can tell one computer that it's responsible for recording, one that it's responsible for coming up with ideas, getting information from websites, etc. And when one sends a message, they all receive it. So it's a hive mind. Within the same 24 hours, I figured out a way to get ChatGPT through the OpenAI API to interpret my plain English ramblings and turn them into legitimate commands for the hive mind. Strictly speaking, if I said, oh, I kind of feel like doing a video about this, can you just help me get recording clips from this video? It will turn that into a command that the hive mind understands. So it sends that out, all the computers receive it, and the ones responsible for recording will say, hey, this is a recording command, and they'll start working on it. I managed to do that in about 24 hours, and I'm super impressed with that. The entire workflow of that isn't complete. There are some breaks in that pipeline, I'll explain it. But before we explain it, the theory is really important. So for example, I have experience with API design and modular design in all its forms. Modularity and by extension abstraction, which is where the API design comes in, is important for all design. All mechanical design, for example, when you're driving a car, the steering wheel you're using is controlling several wheels at once and other components inside the machine. That's an example of a layer of abstraction. So in design, abstraction means you can control many things with fewer things. And I think one of the problems is for people that are brand new to coding that don't understand that theory, when they go to make a program with ChatGPT, they try and do everything at once. The way I've been doing it is isolating specific parts of the workflow. For example, can we get transcripts from YouTube videos online? Yes, through the YouTube API. Make just that specific thing a small script. Okay, we've put that in the bank. Can we control OBS, the recording software, with a Python plugin? Yes. Okay, make that very specific thing a small script. Put that in the bank. Continue. Can we control Audacity with a Python script? Yes, put that specific thing in the bank. So you're doing very small, consumable pieces of tasks that individually they're not very impressive, but together you can create impressive scripts from. So what you're doing is you're taking these very small ideas and you're essentially building your own API for your own workflow. So for example, I like to track things on my Google Sheets document. Okay, ChatGPT, can you help me write a script that can modify Google Sheets data through my account? Yes, okay. Take that very small thing and add that to the bank. And then inside of those small things, open those scripts up again, you can add your own parameters because it's just a matter of changing variables a lot of the time. So what's effectively happening is these small script files you make are becoming functions or commands inside of your own API. Does that make sense? Then when it comes to the interpretation of doing this, right? So you write your own parser, which means that if you're entering in commands in your own terminal, how do you interpret your commands and how does that run those scripts in sequence? The really cool thing about the OpenAI API is that you can pass messages like preemptive instructions to the AI to let it know how to behave or how to respond. So literally in one of those introduction messages, I just say, hey, this is my command structure. structure. Every following message you receive, interpret what I'm trying to say. If it sounds like I want to record something, then only respond with this command structure. And if you receive any kind of link, put it here in the command. So you're literally just telling the AI, this is my command structure for my API. If I sound like I generally want to do something like this, then this is how you respond. And when it responds with that, then you pass it through your parser, and that triggers automations. So that's a general theory behind making a parser, triggering commands, which are essentially your bank of small scripts which do things to improve your workflow. And that bank of small scripts has been created with the help of ChatGPT, means that we don't have to research how to use every single API to manipulate every piece of software, because that's the most useful part about using ChatGPT to write scripts. You don't have to necessarily research how the APIs work for every particular software, every particular website or service. So what it does is it kind of lowers the intelligence threshold there, or the effort threshold, meaning that you don't have to worry about searching something up and then getting distracted if you're fighting against your ADD tendencies all the time. You're just given examples, and if you have experience with programming, you can look at those examples and go, okay, that makes perfect sense. I know exactly how to modify this to get what I like. So the next part, the communication, how do you get the computers talking to each other? That was pretty easy. Because ChatGPT has a good understanding of the different modules available, it can recommend network communication modules that are suitable for your needs. And all you really need is a basic starting point. So I specifically asked for, I want a server and a client script that both run kind of synchronously, so you can send messages while receiving messages, that can connect to each other over the internet, and where we can have a limitless number of instances, but making sure that when one sends a message, it bounces to all of them. And it did that, easy. In fact, it came up with a few different ways of making the network connection work. One of them was not having a server, but actually just communicating over the Wi-Fi network, which did work, but some of the messages got lost, and if they didn't get lost, sometimes they took a couple of minutes to come through. The server way of doing it was a lot more stable. So that's all you really need. You just need two basic scripts there. You just need the bare bones scaffolding, as simple as it can be, to make that message system work. And then that gives you, again, something, if you have coding experience, to develop on. So again, instead of trying to do all of these things in one program with this pipe dream of building these like intelligent worker bots, you do everything in small chunks and you conceptualize it as abstract design. So in one place, we have extremely small chunks of doing small tasks, which we can bundle together into automations. That's your API layer. And then on the other side, we have small chunks building up our interpretation layer. So you have your parser to split up the commands and then basically decide which of those scripts over there we're going to be running and what information to pass to them. Then you have your command interface, where you're basically entering your commands to be split by the parser. And then you have the OpenAI layer, where you've given it this message that says, hey, this is how my command structure works. If I sound like I'm doing this, then create this command for me. So you have all these little chunks and layers. And the bit where you come in as a human is, how do we take these little logic pieces and string them together to make something that actually works? One day, the AI tools will probably be able to do all of this together, but at the moment, this type of project is too large for ChatGPT to do conceptually. But speaking to some friends recently, I described ChatGPT as the smartest, dumbest piece of shit that I've ever used, where in some places it's an absolute genius and in other places it's just dumb as hell. So one of these examples is trying to debug connection errors between the hive mind network that we created. The client server instances would work fine on one computer, but would get different results, basically different error messages on different devices. So on my Surface Go and on my laptop, they would say different things. And obviously when you explain the error to ChatGPT and you show the error code, it gives you a comprehensive essay of all the possible reasons why a connection error might occur. And it's all the usual crap, using the right IP, firewalls blocking connection, etc. And you say it's none of those things, and then it comes up with an eloquent new set of other possible reasons. And then you show it the code and you say, okay, here's the code again. Why might this error be occurring? And then it will give you some possible reasons while highlighting the code again. And it says, you could try this, you could try this. So it's giving you all these possible things to try. And you might sit there for like 10, 20, 30 minutes, a few hours, until you remember that you're talking to something stupid. And in the end, it turns out all I needed to do was just give it the code back and say, can you change this so that these errors just don't happen? Which is, again, like a really big shot in the dark, because that's such an abstract thing to ask. Can you change this code so these specific errors don't happen? And it did. Now that's what makes it a genius. So going back to that, the first attempt at trying to debug the program goes, hey, I'm getting these errors, and it gives you this big essay of all the possible reasons why, which aren't actually related to the code itself. And then cutting to the end of this debug process, which is saying, hey, here's the code. Can you change it so these errors don't happen? And it did. So the approach of debugging makes a huge difference when you come to the realization that you're not actually talking to a help/advice machine. You're talking to a really stupid generative genius. So those are a few things to keep in mind if you're wanting to do code stuff with ChatGPT. Consider onboarding the modular, granular, abstract approach to coding, but you're not trying to do everything all at once. You're effectively building your own API with the help of ChatGPT, and then that gives you all these things you can string together afterwards to make something much more powerful. Thinking about granular little modular scripts as individual programs also gives you something simple that you can really focus on and have a conversation conversation with the AI about. So what do I have so far? I've got the communication scripts, the hive mind, the network works. I've also got the behavioral system working, meaning that individually we can set computers to have different configurations so they know what their roles are. That's quite simple. That's just information kept in a configuration text file. I also have the interpreter system done. So not only can I write commands as I know them, as I know the parser will understand, but we also have OpenAI, which can interpret my general requests and turn those into commands. That works. The only thing I need to do there is a little bit in between, because the regular command line for the server or client instance is actually separate from the OpenAI interpreter. So I need a way that once it interprets and turns that into a command, it quickly opens a client instance, then pushes it to the network and then closes that. So I just need to do that. It's already written the code to do that for me. I just need to link it up. Now over on the other side, I have about a couple of dozen of these little script things starting to build up that workflow API, as we'll call it, but I haven't actually linked them together to do tasks yet. So it's all sitting there. It's ready for me to wrap a layer around it to be able to write these workflow programs. And then it's just a matter of linking it together. So the commands triggering those automations and then getting results. So this is really weird because when talking about the idea of making worker bots, a couple of months ago when I did start talking about this, it was like an unrealistic idea in my mind. But now, again, just a couple of months later, all of it looks possible. And that's kind of like really freaky and really cool. And it's something that I wasn't expecting. So that's something I've just been working on the side. Again, I'm actually trying to take breaks in between it because it's one of those things where, again, if you're prone to hyperfixating on projects, you'll burn yourself out on it really quickly. So I'm actually trying to like slow myself down with it and do things piece by piece. But also simultaneously, because I've been having some medical problems recently, you may know about if you've been following on the main channel, quick breakdown, nutritional deficiencies, canal dehiscence, and paroxysmal positional vertigo and vestibular migraine. But anyway, now that's kind of gotten a bit more under control, even though I'm still doing tests on myself. I'm starting to identify more areas where the workflow can be improved. One of these things is like a scheduling system, which is why I've been using Google Sheets to kind of plan out where I'm scheduling content. So it's kind of like this center point of the pyramid, if you want to consider it like that, where all of the tasks are tracked and propagate from. So that's a space where I'm working, where I can just like write little notes for what's coming out on each day for each like social platform, Twitter, YouTube, etc. So it'd be nice to link up this hive mind idea to that same file. So I can work in the file while the other bots are. And theoretically, like one of these really cool ideas I want to see happen in the future is where I can watch this spreadsheet, and while the bots are working, they're triggering commands to modify the spreadsheet so I can see live how things are changing, what content is being semi-prepared, like what the plan is for content release schedules. So we're not there yet, because like I said, I haven't hooked everything up and there's still work to do with that API. But theoretically, like the end goal is being able to work while watching a spreadsheet where I can observe other worker bots preparing content or planning content or doing whatever I need. So that'll be a long-term project, but like experiments so far have been really interesting, really cool. Yeah, let me know if you've played around with ChatGPT. Let me know what your concerns are about it. I know there are a lot of like ethical, moral concerns. I'm a little bit freaked out by how quickly my perspective has changed on this pipe dream project, between considering it to be like a kind of unrealistic project to it all being very, very easily possible in a couple of months. So yeah, let me know what you think. Also consider subscribing if you're interested in this content on my main channel. I've got my Patreon, patreon.com/CurtisHolt if you want to get like emails when new content's released. I also make Blender tools, curtisholt.online/store. So thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, and also if you made it this far, put some kind of computer emoji in the comments so I can see who actually made it to this point in the video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.